Share it to Cadbury mini eggs are cracked. Hello, happy Monday, everybody. Our panel is back. I am joined as always by the intrepid Christy Benson, Emily Priestley, and Lisa Skavinsky. We are the female panel. And our theme for this upcoming series is fetch, fad, and fear of dogs. And today we're going to be focusing mainly on fetch. There has been this sort of shrinking, we've noticed in the last maybe couple of years, and especially in the last few months, this sort of shrinking of outlets for dogs. Dog parks, bad. Dog play, bad. Now, fetch, it's bad. It's bad for their brains. It's bad for their cortisol levels. It's bad for their knees. It used to be tug. When we were sort of preparing this panel last week, we talked about sort of some of the previous fads that have come and gone. Stuff like, okay, don't let dogs sit, that's oppressive. Don't play tug with dogs, the various nutrition fads and so on. Tug is no longer the boogeyman. Everybody seems to be over that. And now they're on to fetch. Somebody seems to have tried to make a name for themselves by posting something new and interesting. Because saying, oh, wow, operant classical conditioning is too boring. So we need to, say something new. And so it's like, fetch is bad. Don't play fetch with dogs. We should add at the outset that there has been no actual evidence. So meaning any research, any studies supporting this. This has been just somebody saying it and then it being repeated. The rationale that they're putting forward is several-fold. One is that if you avoid fetch, then you're reducing this hyper-arousal because dogs get excited when you play fetch and they get excited anticipating fetch. We're avoiding orthopedic injuries. And then the latest one, which sort of made our hair catch fire, was, oh my God, this is how we avoid compulsive disorders in dry B dogs. And that seems to all of us to be 180 degrees away from what we have seen. So has anybody been actually seeing this in their practice?
Yes, so I'll jump in because I started noticing this about a year ago, really starting to take off, where it was showing up in news feeds on social media. And like you said, we don't have studies to prove that fetch is bad, but a lot of the posts were making reference to adrenaline and cortisol really
levels.
sciencey things that when you're watching
without numbers, there's no like numbers. Here's the baseline. Here's what we.
It's pseudoscience, essentially.
Yeah.
It's bias being packaged as fact and packaged as science and scientific numbers. And, it sounds really catchy. It sounds really good.
It's made
up.
But
then I started seeing it in my practice. And this is where it seems, and Jean and I talked about this earlier this week, but it seems like not that big of a deal. Like who cares if someone isn't playing fetch? But why we care is because dogs are actually being unnecessarily stationed. So I started seeing this in my practice where people were avoiding running their dogs, avoiding play, avoiding fetch, because they had been told by previous practitioners that their dog would become an adrenaline junkie, that it would lead to problems, that they would become a super athlete. And so my hair did catch on fire because when we have dogs who are being put on the couch and their well-meaning clients are avoiding exercise with these dogs, this is not just a small thing. This actually could be looked at as a welfare issue. And that's how I see it. And that's why this mountain is one that I will die on every day.
I'll die on it. I'll die on it with you. As many people know, I was in dog sports for a couple of decades with largely high drive dogs. And to a dog, if they did not get an outlet. And so there's two models here that we need to sort of, at the bottom here. One is this Pandora's box model, which is if you allow a dog an activity, that's opening sort of like this cauldron, and the dog is going to end up sort of ill and compulsive disordered and what have you. The model, which is more sort of linked to actual animal behaviors, called the hydraulic model, which was originally way back put forward by Lorenz. And that is that there is waxing and waning of drive for basic stuff like water, food, sex. which is like, when you don't have it, you want more. When you get some, you have a latency period. And something like fetch always seemed to fall for me in the hydraulic model, where if dogs didn't get regular activities where they could run, chase stuff, especially stuff like, border collies, where they've been bred over hundreds of generations to want to gather and to want to do this stuff. If they didn't get it, the dogs would be more hyper, less happy, less relaxed. And any dog who had sort of any kind of compulsive stuff in their line, it would wax, it would get higher when the dog didn't get an outlet. And so that's what we mean when we're talking about it being 180 degrees away from what is actually known about the basic science of drives and what, dogs need.
I think
we look,
in case our audience is not familiar too, I just want to hop in and say that Emily has developed an expertise, and a lot of her clients are herding dogs. So I think that's why we're so glad to have you on this panel, is that you are working with a lot of herding dogs. And I think they're the ones, herding dogs and dogs who are like herders, who have that
drivey,
fetchy, are the ones who are, I think, going to be the most affected by this information, this misinformation that's really out there for
and the welfare thing of wiping, so an activity the dog clearly loves and lives for, wiping it out of his life or reducing it, just on the face of it, it's a crazy argument to say, well, the thing that you love the most, it makes me upset because you look excited, so you don't get to do it.
and if we look at, we should probably, I think, for the pet owners that are joining us, outline something like, if we look at compulsive disorders, there are a lot of ideas about what causes compulsive disorders, and fetch is not on that list. In fact, most dogs that we work with, and I can't think of one dog who that I've worked with who has been diagnosed by a vet or a vet behaviorist, because trainers should not be diagnosing compulsive disorder. We can suspect it, but it is out of our lane to diagnose. But those dogs, I can't think of one that I've worked with who has had compulsive disorder caused by fetch, or who had fetch removed from their protocol. So we can see behaviors that look over the top to some. They can seem obsessive or they can seem compulsive, but happy and excited dogs can look really over the top. And so we have to be very careful that we're not diagnosing normal, happy and excited behavior as an actual diagnosable disorder. And this is a huge issue for me too, because allowing these dogs to have access to something like enrichment and exercise is very, very important for their well-being. So removing it because we don't like the way it looks is very, very dangerous.
Which brings us to the fear of dogs. That it used to be, we dogs are trying to dominate us, so we need to sort of oppress them. That's fallen out of favor, with good reason. I mean, rest in peace, that whole stuff. And sort of aversives as sort of an oppressive means. So we can no longer oppress dogs with aversives and invoke dominance to oppress them. But they're still moving. So what are we going to do? And I'm uncomfortable. It can't just be that I'm uncomfortable, because that would be because the dog has to have agency. It has to be because it's bad for him. It's bad for the dog. It's bad for the dog.
Right.
Which is like, huh?
That is like such a weird dichotomy we keep seeing over and over. It seems to be the same choir who's talking about, start button behaviors before you do training with positive reinforcement. It's all about agency. It's all about
dog choice.
Autonomy. Yeah. Dogs have to have choice. So don't make them sit like we were talking about earlier, because, maybe the dog doesn't want to sit and a million different reasons.
What if the dog wants to play? And what if the dog wants to play fetch? That's a problem, isn't it?
That's the other thing. The other side is, if you want to give dogs agency and you want to give them choice and you want to give them autonomy, and God forbid we ever frustrate them for a half a second. If we cause frustration, it's a problem. But it's the same group of folks that are saying, they can't, we don't want them playing fetch, playing with other dogs, all of the things that are species normal, and in some cases breed necessary, that we're saying that, we're going to give you agency over everything except for the things that you really want to do. You know, when you're on leash, we're going to make you have to be neutral. You can't
It's faux agency.
And then hearing people saying, you know, things like the zoomies is an unstable dog. How heartbreaking is that? There's nothing more wonderful than watching a dog do their zoomies and just pathologizing all these things. And I think you're right, pathologizing them so that you have a reason to say they shouldn't happen, rather than the dog wants to do them. But which is it? Is it the dog should have agency? And, you know,
As long as he doesn't move too much,
Yeah.
and as long as he's not intense, and as long as he's not excited.
it's tough. It's tough because I think if you asked a dog and they could talk, they'd say, if you're giving me a choice and you're giving me agency, man, do I want to do this activity? And yes, I need to interact with my own species, you know? And but taking that stuff away because we're uncomfortable with movement and excitement, and using words like hyperarousal that, you know, aren't operationalized and sound pathological. I think it's tough, and I feel bad for owners who are trying to get it right, and it's just too much.
Yeah, that we want to tease apart
Yeah, and it's just
arousal when it's related to fear, anxiety, worry, uncomfortable, versus excitement, happy, anticipation. To put that on the same bucket and call it arousal is doing a huge disservice. To wipe excitement out of dogs' lives is just, I like Emily, I will die on that mountain. So what about the orthopedic stuff?
Yeah, we certainly see a lot of people toss this out as evidence, you know, or I've seen that on sort of social media threads where someone's like, well, you know, my veterinarian who has an orthopedic specialty sees a lot of cruciate injuries from fetch, ergo. And I think, as far as I know, we haven't actually seen any science that says that out of the population of everybody that's playing fetch, and you know, an increase in representation exists for fetch over other activities. And I know we were talking about this before the panel started, but dogs get cruciate injuries from many types of movement, not just fetch. And also, if somebody legitimately, their practice is centered on looking at dogs who have a particular type of injury, they probably potentially, I don't want to sort of dismiss anyone's expertise, but they potentially have a bias against an activity that they are seeing occasionally, right? Because this is what's in front of them. They obviously have a human brain. Human brains see patterns like this. So I would be, you know, I would be willing to.
It's a kind of availability bias. Is that what you're talking about, Christy?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, dogs blow cruciates walking. They blow, you know, one of my dogs blew cruciate running through the fields. And my suspicion is that, you know, she was a pediatric spay and that contributed. Also, she was a chow and they're prone to it. So no more running through fields, no more walking, no more, you know, the argument that a cruciate is blown during an activity, therefore let's kill that activity, means that dogs are not going to move. So we really, you know, I mean, it'd be good to have some real science here about the fetch and orthopedic stuff, because we care very deeply about we don't want orthopedic injuries any more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But the rationale being put forward is just so, you know, it's just failure of thinking.
And if we remove an activity that's generally good for dogs that people can really do, and I think this is something that isn't on our to talk about list, but I don't think we can ignore it. It's an awesome motivator. Like, I mean, talk about having wonderful motivation for dogs who can be a little bit hard to live with. You know, like, no judgment, but you know, so having an ability to motivate these dogs easily, especially for recalls and stuff. I mean, it just anyway. So if we take something that dogs like fetch with sticks or balls or what have you away from these dogs' lives, are they actually going to be healthier? Or are they going to be chewing through walls?
It just occurred to me, something we were also talking about last week was, you know, so way back when I was doing sports and we had all these very mentally healthy, physically healthy dogs doing massive amounts of sort of fetch and agility and fly ball and so on, that none of those dogs, I don't know one of them who was on a psychotropic medication. And so, I'm wondering now about sort of, okay, so is now, and we should say for the record that all of us here are very much in support of the use of psychotropic medications. We're very pro-medication biased. But is there sometimes sort of an attempt to medicate dogs rather than give them outlets? You know, I worry a little bit about that maybe that ought to be tried first, you know, in our effort to try and, you know, kind of calm dogs down, kind of shrink their activity, you know, this sort of, ugh.
I'm always amazed too by this trend seems to be really about fetch. We don't see people saying this about herding. We don't see people saying this about agility. We don't see people saying it necessarily about flyball. So
Yet.
I think, well, and I think what they're doing perhaps is they're saying that they like more controlled environments, but it's because it's right for the human. The human sees it as controlled, but
Humans
it's
like to play agility.
Yeah, and it seems more
Right.
structured perhaps to them, but for the dog being over the top, and this is another mountain I will die on. It's okay for your dog, and in fact, for my dogs, I purposely make sure every single day that they have an opportunity to be over what I might consider over the top, excited, running, barking, chasing, digging, whatever it might be.
And afterwards they
are calm, right? And they sleep, and you know, and these dogs weren't selected. I didn't bring these dogs home and select them because of their ability to settle. They all came to me from either they're working line dogs, or, you know, in Mozzie's case, probably straight from a ranch. And yet calm follows after they've had the opportunity to be happy and excited and do the things that they love. For us, it would be like going to an amusement park. Can you imagine if you went to an amusement park when you were a child, you got excited, and then you were told you could never go back again because you might develop,
Too excited,
you know,
you were screaming and running.
Adrenaline addiction.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think what happens is with fetch, these trainers or these, you know, whomever is putting forth this idea, they are uncomfortable with happy and excited dogs, and that's the fear of dogs piece. And I think people sometimes, obviously, fear of dogs is, you know, we think about it like growling,
ribbons
aggressive.
and trophies? We can start ribbons and trophies for fetch, and suddenly
it'll get
grandfathered in like agility. Because agility, I mean, have you ever watched like some of the really high drive dogs doing agility? They're over the top. They're loving it. But the human, that's okay, because at the end of the day, we get a title, ribbon, and a trophy.
I send that to my clients when my clients are saying, like, I'm concerned because my dog barks when I go out to play fetch. I send them YouTube clips of dogs waiting
barking
for fly ball.
agility.
Bark, bark. They're so excited, and none of those dogs are being pulled out by the handlers because they're excited.
And
they
barking.
Are sometimes even bred to be that way because we like them to be fast and excited and all of those things. So, you know, it can look like it might be a problem, but sometimes we have to just table this concept that, you know, that the barking, the jumping, the inability to want to stop. These dogs usually won't want to stop playing, and that's not also that.
But
also
you can, but to a dog, every single dog, we've all stopped them. Like however millions of dogs have ever played fetch, there was always an end. They always stopped. It never went on forever. You know.
And they won't be a super athlete. I think this is the other thing too, you know, that people
and
are
by the
afraid
way, what the hell is wrong with being a super athlete or being athletic at all, or being in good condition?
And even, you know, Olympians hit a point where they need to sleep and eat and relax and be calm. Like, you know, Michael Phelps is not swimming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and has an inability to stop. And our dogs, like, they certainly are the same. So do they like it? Yes. Do we have to stop it? No. Is it okay for me to say sometimes when we go out to play fetch and Stormy is barking, sometimes it's loud and sometimes it's annoying? It's okay to say that, but it's not okay for me to package that as a behavior problem just because my ears hurt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a dirty trick. Let's breed them to have high drive, breed them to live for fetch, but you can't have it.
No. And then you can't do anything except licky mats and, you know, calming exercises. Like, we're just gonna, you know, and to be frank, when you're trying to, you know, put a lid on a boiling pot of water, you can try and shove that down all you want, but you could just turn the heat down instead, you know, also known as let your dog be happy and excited, and that temperature will come down. You don't always have to avoid the thing that you think is causing it. In
What if a
fact,
dog-
I
what if
think
a-
it makes your job harder if you want calm.
What if a dog blew a cruciate during a relaxation protocol? Heavens.
It may have happened already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, considering how many cruciates get blown.
Like this desire for calm it's odd to me because I didn't get a
Calm
dog.
is calm equals good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if
Anything
someone
else of
wants
that
a
is
really
not
calm dog, I think there's seniors who are available, you know?
Yeah, you can purchase calm dogs. You can adopt calm dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have a dog who's not calm, then you can't just it's
Say
weird
the
to
goal
be,
is calm.
yeah, to be like, I'm gonna do what I need to do to make this dog's life small enough so that I can just have calm all the time. Like, why is calm better than I would personally rather have Soleil running like crazy after a stick than Soleil hanging out calm. Sure, it's fine, that's good. It's calm. I want her to be calm when I'm on
Yeah,
live.
convenience.
But I also love seeing her be a dog and go bananas over
But
sticks.
you're a minority, I think. I think there's a lot of people who think they like seeing dogs be dogs, but then when it actually happens, when
Can
dogs are
convince them.
fascinated by other dogs and they want to play fetch and they want to do stuff that hits us in the fear of dog muscle,
Yeah.
suddenly we don't want to let dogs be dogs.
How much do you think this overlaps at all with the need for people to have their dogs pay attention to only them?
Yes. I think it's all part of the same thing. It's more convenient for me if you don't want to go over and greet that dog or don't think every person that you meet is your friend. I want you to focus on me. I don't want you barking or pulling. I don't want to have to throw a ball. I love that somewhere I was reading, it's not fetch. It's this ridiculous obsession with fetch that people have where they play 2 hours at a time. And I'm like, where are
Just
those?
that.
My clients, if I can get them to do 5 minutes of fetch or tug, to give their dogs legal outlets to do the things that they want and need to do, I'm just like, thank you. You did tug for 5 minutes, you win. Like if you do 10 minutes of fetch with your dog in the yard, I'm just so grateful that you did something with your dog. So where are these people playing 2 hours of fetch?
Right.
Because they want to run their dogs into the ground. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, where are they? Yeah.
Again, we're back to a point where I just don't see these things that people are saying are
neither.
happening.
I think
I
it
just don't
also
see
needs to be said too, because I have on social media recently, I've seen trainers say they're dangerous because your client will run the dog into the ground. If you have such low expectations of your clients that you think we can't teach them how to use a
or your
chuck it and play
counseling
fetch,
skills.
your
Yeah.
clients you're underestimating them. Your clients can be taught how to exercise their dogs. And if you think that they can't, you need to refer them to someone who can help them because you're underestimating their
Your
abilities.
counseling skills may be
Right.
wanting.
Yes.
Yeah, big time. Again, I think the bigger challenge is getting them to do just
At all.
and not because owners are bad people or don't want to give joy to their dogs. I've got clients that literally they work their lives around ensuring their dogs get joy and
Yes.
exercise and all the things they love. But most people, most everyday person, work life is hard. You're busy. You've got work. You've got limited bandwidth. So, when you have free time to spend with your dog and you're exhausted, it is sometimes for folks a lot to ask them to go out and throw a ball for 20 minutes or whatever. So I just think it's the opposite. Like this idea that your clients are gonna, it's that Pandora's box. If you let them play fetch, they're gonna drive their dogs into the ground and crucians. You're like, who are your clients? Because most of mine, they're doing their best to give to meet their dog's needs. And we all fall short, right? We try, but we could have no job. We could work full time and it would still be hard to fill the needs of a domesticated dog because
And it's, I mean, it sounds like, what you're saying, Lisa, is that we're making our errors sort of on the wrong side. I think the problem is people overdoing it. In pet dog training, most of the time, the problem is people underdoing it. And like Emily said, I think we can get a little nuance here and expect that we can say to them, here's an appropriate amount.
Right,
and we should add for the record that we're not talking, not all dogs like fetch, but the ones who do, the ones who live for it, those are the ones we're talking about.
Yep. And there's some, I've got 2 pit bulls that both have torn cruciates. They're seniors now. And they would give anything to be able to play fetch. Ruthie, the Springer Spaniel, lives for it. I would never stop her from doing that. We do a lot, but the pit bulls, they really can't. It's heartbreaking. So we find other ways, other enrichment items. But I was just saying to Kevin this morning, when Tucker was sleeping, and you know how they do the thing where they're kicking their foot, they're kind of, you can tell that he was like, I don't know if you can tell, I can't get into the dog's brain, but it looked like he was dreaming about running, and he was really kicking those legs and huffing in his sleep. And I was like, how very, very sad, because I wish this dog could have one more day, because he's at the very end of his life. He's got 2 torn cruciates that have been repaired. And I think
Did he tear them playing fetch? Dare I ask?
He can't play fetch. He can't.
How did he tear them?
Oh, in one case, it was just jumping off the steps of the porch, going to chase a squirrel.
No squirrels.
The other one was just because he was compensating for the one, it weakened and weakened and weakened. And then I think he just kind of trotted across the yard one day and he yelped and laid down.
So trotting.
Yeah, but it was absolutely not, it was definitely not during
Trotting,
fetch.
but we should worry about trotting.
Yes, never let them trot. Pickles tore his, launching from the couch. He got excited. Kevin came through the door. He was curled up on the couch. He jumped off the couch, yelp, tear. So, dogs and pit bulls are pretty well prone to cruciate tears, or at least those big mixes. I feel bad for them because they can't do the things they want to do, but they didn't tear it doing the things they want to do. They were just living life. So.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about the fear of dogs that, and we sort of talk about fear of dogs, and I'm still sort of at a loss for how to help people who have fear of dogs. So like occasionally there are people with fear of dogs who want to get over it. I mean, Suzanne Breener is sort of one of our grads who had fear of dogs, but who was able to identify that and then get, and then improve it. Most people who have fear of dogs, I don't think they acknowledge, I don't think they know they have it. I think they think that their fear of dogs is sort of appropriate or a signal that what they're seeing is something bad. And I think that's part of the problem here. And so I'm at a loss for how to help those people recognize that might be what they're experiencing, is that they're a little bit afraid of intensity.
Right.
Yeah.
And dogs can be very intense when they're playing fetch. Like I can see why some people would find that if they weren't like us, like kind of like into that, they might find that really off-putting, and they're kind of like slavering,
and they're not, and they're more about the fetch than they are about the human. Yeah. Just kind of the same thing when we get to talking about dog play, the fact that the dog is not handler centric at that moment, they're about dogs. I think that feels sort of out of control. I've lost him,
Yeah, I've lost their control. They're not focused on me.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Like just to think, like, oh my God, no! If you have a dog who loves fetch, you get a ball in your hand, you have all the control.
Yeah, why not frame it as?
Yeah, we can give you control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be hard. I know it can be hard when we see things that look problematic, but if you are someone who has a real hard time trying to decide between what is okay and what is happy and excited and what isn't, you can hire a practitioner who, is comfortable with those things. I look at videos a lot for clients and help them break down, play, fetch, whatever it is, yeah, I can see that looks like a lot, but see how he's doing X, Y, and Z. He's happy and he's excited. And sometimes it just takes having someone walk you through it to feel better about it. So, we don't have to hire a practitioner just because we have major problems. We can hire them to help us with play.
But the problem is you end up with somebody who's on that side of the training industry who thinks all of that is pathological. So,
right, which is hire the right person. Right?
Yeah.
Go to the academyfordogtrainers.com and
yeah.
And I think
it should be better videos. And I love one of the things we did, and we probably could talk about that when we do the dog one. We did Habituate with Me, the webinars in the academy, where, ever growing, more aggressive dog interactions, and you would stop and you would take a pulse. How's everybody feeling? For people who really do have a high intervention.
Oh yeah, it's no fun being afraid of something. Even if we can objectively say, well, yeah, actually that's healthy and that's normal. It's no fun for people to see dogs with intensity and pointy teeth doing stuff.
Yeah. And I just want to put it out there too, just circling back to the injury thing. I think there's a sense, and it's very natural and good and sort of parental feeling that we all have towards our dogs, that we don't want them to get hurt. So if I see like, oh my God, never give dogs this particular type of food toy because one dog got their tongue stuck in it and got hurt. Oh my God, never let dogs fetch because some dogs get an injury from doing fetch, so no dog should ever do that. But we can't use that as the arbiter of we should do this with dogs, because imagine if we did that with ourselves. Like, I recently started playing a sport and people get hurt. It's like a full contact sport and I freaking love it. And if you said to me, actually, you can't do that as an adult organism because there is a chance that you will get hurt, that would make my life less good, So we can't say a small number of dogs get injured doing it, so therefore no dog should do it ever. Obviously we don't want dogs playing with firearms or razor blades or something. I mean, we can be reasonable, but we can't just say a small number of dogs get injured doing it, so even though they love it, it's off the table.
And sometimes wandering in the desert too. It's not just injury, which I get the injury part, I do. But, there's also a lot of desert wandering there about, they're gonna become compulsive and we're creating behavior, problems of, anxiety.
No, the compulsiveness was built at the factory when they bred.
Right. If that was there, it's there.
Driving and prone to compulsive activity and wanting to sort of herd for 10 hours. That we did not build that the breeders did. We are as usual, the mop-up squad.
And could as far as the compulsive stuff, and I would be interested in Emily and Jean, well, and you too, Lisa, but isn't it more likely that the dog will behave compulsively if they don't get fetch?
Yes, I'll die on that mountain any day.
I will die on that mountain.
And the other thing, like Emily said before, is we are not in a position to diagnose compulsive disorders. If we suspect one, a dog is whirling, tail chasing, fly catching, flank sucking, light chasing, etc. We get them to a veterinary behaviorist who can actually do the diagnosis. It is irresponsible and malpractice for a trainer to say, this dog has a compulsive disorder or this activity causes compulsive disorders. That is irresponsible. And, if there were standards in this industry, one of the things surely at the top of the list will be not diagnosing things that are in the lane of a veterinary behaviorist.
Yeah, and a lot of compulsive disorders, they often are exacerbated by underlying conditions. So lots of dogs with, it's likely genetic, so there's probably some sort of genetic component, but a lot of dogs have, pain as an underlying factor. And even when we treat the pain, the behavior can stay. And so it's hard to know, like, was it coming or wasn't it without the pain? But, this is why if you are diagnosing this stuff out of your lane and you haven't had that dog checked out by a vet, you could be misguiding your client when that dog has something that they need help. And if you're saying, like, just don't play fetch because I'm not educated on what happy and excited looks like, and I'm misreading, that as compulsive behavior, you could be missing that dog. That dog is at that moment suffering poor welfare because they are not being adequately treated for their condition, and they need a diagnosis and they need a treatment plan. That needs to start with someone who is not us and not.
And we should say that the gold standard treatment for compulsive disorders is appropriate medication, cessation of aversives, if any, interruption, use of DRI, and enrichment, increased enrichment. And it's never decreased enrichment.
I will say with certainty that every case that I've worked where a dog has been diagnosed with compulsive disorder, fetch has been part of the protocol that we've used to help them.
So it's, that's why we're doing this. Is it's not just an intellectual exercise in sort of like this, these sort of poor internal consistency and so on with the arguments or the failure to put up any evidence. It's, as Emily said at the beginning, this is about welfare, and there's the basic welfare that for animals to engage in species normal behavior is a very, very basic thing. This is not a frill.
And then I think, as Lisa said, like, we're talking about dog guardians who are really doing their best, and they're seeing this stuff go by, and they're like, "Oh my God, am I doing something wrong?" Like this is really aimed at dog guardians who are trying to do their best, who are trying to learn the most they can, and just seeing this go by, oh,
It really is sort
it
of like,
hurts my heart.
it's, very, very, very irresponsible. And we should say I don't know if you all probably saw the one that went by, said, well, playing fetch over and over and over is not a good simulation of that portion of the predatory sequence, because wolves do one hunt a day, and it's over and that's it. Well, that one hunt is not a 2-minute affair.
Right.
PS, dogs are not wolves. PS, drivey dogs are not like other dogs. There's so many things wrong with that argument, and yet it was put forward, and yet there were people sort of, just like, wow, okay.
It's
kind of
actually a
believe
complete
in what you see on social media at face value.
And you're right,
Or-
like these guys are not wolves, but also if we look at wolves as a template, they are hunting things like mice, and they do it continuously throughout the day.
Yeah, they don't catch them all.
Yeah, they don't catch them all.
Trying.
But let's not pretend we're wolf biologists and make statements saying that a wolf only hunts once a day. Like,
Yeah, first
it's
of all,
actually-
Therefore,
yeah, like, go read Never Cry Wolf, because Farley Mowat talks about them hunting mice in that book. So enjoy.
yeah, or David Meach.
And realistically, don't we want to give our dogs the best life we can? And I'm not sure that using nature where, lots of animals are injured, sick, die, like maybe.
Yeah, the naturalistic fallacy, which is, we hold up nature, which is, have a high parasite load, reproduce early, die young.
Yeah,
Like, I'd rather give my dog
I'd like a little
life.
bit more from my family member, companion animal.
Yeah. Well, this was satisfying.
It
I
was,
feel better.
it may make zero difference, but I think there needs to be pushback against this rather than blind acceptance, and thinking. So we're going to be back in a couple of weeks on this same theme of fear of dogs, and we look forward to tackling more about this critically important topic.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.